Hey Hyperdrive, Steven Zarita here, and I'm doing something a little bit new here. I mentioned a while back that I did not like the new Godzilla movie, and even though this review is very late, you guys wanted to hear my thoughts on it, so I'm going to give my thoughts on the Godzilla movie and why I didn't like it. Alright, and this is the one and only time I'm going to say it. This is a spoiler alert. I'm going to just talk about the movie openly, so if you haven't seen the movie, this is your one and only chance to click away. If not, I hope you're ready for the ride. One of the things that this movie does completely wrong is it has a cast of extremely boring and flat characters. The only interesting character is Bryan Cranston. He's killed off really quick. I was watching the movie and I realized, okay, they've used up all the epic footage of him from the trailer talking about how this isn't an earthquake or some sort of natural disaster. That whole monologue happened and I went, this is the first 30 minutes of the movie. I don't think he has much left. And he dies shortly after. He was the one and only interesting character. He had this long stake in the matter with kaiju and this whole conspiracy, and I really wanted to see him prove his conspiracy right. We don't get to see that, and instead we are stuck with his son and his wife. And his son and his wife are just so boring. We have a very generic scene of him coming home from the army and reuniting with his wife and kid, but it should be heartwarming, but it's just done in the most generic way possible, so I couldn't even care. He's in the army and she is, I think she's a nurse. She works in the medical field, which is cool, but that makes it to where I can only describe them as their job. Their job is to help people, so I don't feel like they really have a personal stake in the matter. It's just their job. She has to go save people. He has to go join the army. I guess Bryan Cranston's son is our hero because he goes off to try and stop the kaiju, but even if he didn't want to, he's in the army, they would just draft him into doing it anyways, so it's not like he really had a choice in the matter. Bryan Cranston's kid goes back into the army to help stop these kaiju, and he knows ahead of time that they're heading to San Francisco, and he doesn't call ahead of time to warn his family. They find out shortly after, but if this is going to be a dad I care about, why doesn't he care enough about his family to call him and say, hey, there's 3 monsters heading your way. They're each the size of buildings. You should probably leave the city. You've probably noticed I keep saying Bryan Cranston's kid. The characters are so unmemorable in this movie, I cannot remember a single name if your name was not Godzilla or Muto. Everyone else I can just describe by their job, which is what I'm going to keep doing. Army guy. Bryan Cranston's kid is now going to be Army Guy. So Army Guy is flying back to America because the Army needs him there. And he stops in Hawaii because the Pacific Ocean is really big and you need to stop in Hawaii. And in Hawaii we have the first big kaiju attack scene where they attack civilization. And he's in an airport and he's getting on the tram to get to the terminal. And there's an Asian family and this little boy gets separated from the family. And the tram starts going and he kind of says like, hey, don't worry, I'll get him back to you at the next stop. But between that and the next stop, the big kaiju battle happens, even though you don't really see it. But that first battle happens. Well, after all the mayhem and all the death and destruction, he's walking around with this little Asian kid, and the Asian kid finds his family on his own without the guy's help. So what was the point of all that? Like, he really didn't need to do anything. The kid just finds his family, and then that doesn't come back into play later on in the movie. And that's kind of a basic rule of screenwriting where everything that happens should affect the outcome of your movie, and they could have just done without that completely. I guess they're trying to make him seem like a good guy, but the kid seemed fine enough on his own. Going back to that whole everything that happens in your movie should matter thing, did anything that the humans actually did matter? They're trying to lure the monsters with the radiation from a nuclear bomb, lure them together, blow up the bomb, and then destroy them. And then the whole bomb plan goes wrong, so they have to extract the bomb from a heavily populated area. So then Godzilla shows up, fights the monsters as he always does, and wins. Now let's pretend the humans had no part in the matter, didn't have the nuclear bomb, didn't lure them away. What would have changed? Well, maybe the fight wouldn't have taken place in San Francisco. Godzilla would have found the 2 monsters, found the nest, fought them, won, saved the day. We'd have the exact same ending without any of the characters. So what was the point of all of them? I don't know. So I've been talking about how boring the humans are in this movie, both as characters and humans as a whole, since the army was pretty pointless. And I'm going to say something you probably disagree with me at first, but think about it. The characters in the 1998 American Godzilla movie were better because they actually, A, were memorable, even if they were annoying. I can remember Totopoulos because he kept saying his name over and over.
It's Totopoulos.
I can remember his reporter ex-girlfriend because she had an interesting aspiration that wasn't generic nurse or generic army guy. And you know what else? They actually did have a say in what happened to Godzilla. They actually would lead Godzilla in the '98 movie through New York, through the subways, Madison Square Garden, find all the eggs, kill the eggs, down the bridge, and then to Godzilla's doom. So the humans were actually good characters in the sense that what they did mattered because they actually had a say in the outcome of the movie. Now here's the main problem of this movie. The movie is called Godzilla. There's almost no Godzilla. This is a kaiju movie. I came to see giant monsters fight giant monsters, and there's a little bit of that, but compared to any other kaiju movie I've seen, it's barely there. So let's talk about the first time we actually see Godzilla in his full form. Up through about the first half of the movie, we only see glimpses of Godzilla, mainly the scales on his spine, swimming around in the water, breaking around the beach, or on a radar somewhere. So we get to Hawaii, we get to the big first kaiju fight that I'm talking about where, you know, the Asian kid on the tram in the airport, that doesn't even matter. Well, the Mutos start attacking, Godzilla shows up, and the build up to this scene is amazing. All the water on the beach recedes, everybody on the luau on the beach notices that and they think, oh my gosh, tsunami. They start panicking, they start running in. And it pretty much is a tsunami because huge waves of water just start going through the water. I think a dog died. I'm pretty sure a dog died in that tsunami. Mayhem and destruction, cars piling up everywhere while there's more mayhem and destruction over at the airport. And then while all that's happening and the tram is being destroyed, you just see one plane crash into another plane, boom, and then another plane, boom, and then you just see a gigantic foot, and then you see Godzilla. This is the first time you actually see his face. Godzilla's there and he's just pissed off for some reason. He's just like, rah, and he's yelling. And you're like, oh my gosh, here comes the fight. And he's running up to the first Muto, grabs him, and then it cuts. There's like all this buildup and it cuts. And some people are saying, well, you don't have to show your monster that early. It can be like Jaws. Well, here's the thing. They like half showed him. Like they're in this weird halfway where they could have just had all the tsunami and destruction and then cut later. And I would think, oh, they're going to save the reveal for later. Or they could just show the entire fight. Either of those would be the right choice. This thing is stuck weirdly in the middle where I'm like, all right, there he is. Here's the fight because we had an amazing build up to it and it cuts. You don't do that. And that's not the only time it does that. It just keeps cutting to reporter footage. There'll be a fight, but you only know about it because reporters are saying, there's a fight going on in the city. It's pretty big. Or there'll be a graphic saying, well, the monster's in this section of the city, so if you're over here, you're going to want to evacuate. He's moving that way. So finally, we get to the fight at the end, which is where you actually see all three monsters fight, Godzilla and the guy Muto and the girl Muto. But I don't think you ever see Godzilla for more than 2 or 3 solid minutes at a time because he'll be fighting for a little bit and then it'll tilt down to the humans. I don't care about the army humans because A, what they do doesn't matter, and B, the movie's not about the army humans, it's about Godzilla. That's why it's called Godzilla, so let's just live in the world of Godzilla. Now this is something that Japanese movies do right all the time, because when it's time for Godzilla to fight, you will just be in that fight for 3, 4, 5 minutes. And then maybe you'll cut to your human characters for a little bit, but then it's very much centered on the fight. The fight's at night, which should be cool. Like if you look at Godzilla Final War, some of those fights are at night and they're very cool, but there's this weird stylistic thing nowadays. Godzilla is walking around the city and he's kicking up a lot of dust, which is I guess what he would do, but there's so much dust in the air and it's so dark, I can barely see him. Again, I'm going to compare it to the 1998 Godzilla movie, which you guys don't like, but at least I could see what was going on. Even if the CG wasn't as good, and you might not like the design of the monster, whatever that kaiju was, I could see exactly what it was. I could describe it to you, and you know what? You can describe it to me, because everyone who hates it will talk about how it's a weird iguana-type looking thing. All right, here are a couple other nitpicks I had with the movie that kind of just go in their own jumbled category. One, when the trailer of this movie first came out, they used the music from 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is great music, it's a great score, and I thought it worked great for the trailer. And you know what, for trailers, you can borrow music from other movies because the trailer isn't the finished product. The 2001: A Space Odyssey music is in the final movie. That music is so iconic, it just feels out of place in the movie. It works for the trailer, but I'm wondering why Godzilla can't just be its own thing, or why they can't use some of the Godzilla themes that the Japanese movies have used to kind of tie it in with this whole iconic character. Second, why did the army attack Godzilla on the bridge in San Francisco? The entire time, they've kind of pretty well established Godzilla is fairly smart in this movie and that he doesn't attack the humans. They swim alongside Godzilla for hundreds or thousands of miles and he's just chilling. But then all of a sudden he gets to this bridge and everybody freaks out. and they start shooting at him. I didn't really get that. I think they were just trying to make some action happen at that part of the movie, but it didn't really do anything. It was just confusing. This movie also lacked a social commentary, which is a weird thing to say, but a lot of the Japanese Godzilla movies had a bit of a social commentary, especially the original one, which is what I thought this would be a throwback to. I wasn't looking for just a summer blockbuster movie. I was looking for something that would teach us a lesson, because I'm a sucker for lessons. The original movie, 1954 Godzilla, was a lesson against the use of atomic warfare. Godzilla in that movie was a metaphor for the nuclear bomb. So the destruction he causes on Tokyo is exactly like the destruction the bomb causes on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So it's 2014. We have a lot more environmental stuff to deal with. We have a lot different kinds of warfare. I was hoping Godzilla could represent something like that, or the Mutos could represent something like that, but they really don't. I have to admit, this movie did do some things right. First of all, the visual effects, even if all the dust and nighttime did get in the way, were really good. Second, the build-up was also very good. Even if I think that they cut away way too early, the minute or 2 or 3 of build-up in Hawaii was amazing. Thirdly, they actually make Godzilla a force of nature. He doesn't have a commentary on nature, but he's causing tsunamis, and every time he steps, it's like an earthquake. Him just moving around in the city is causing billions of dollars of damage. He's a force of nature. He's also trying to balance nature. That's something they talk about. He's going to balance the nature that the Mutos have just unbalanced. So I appreciated that, because if you go back to the 1954 Godzilla movie, it's like that a lot. One of the first times you witness Godzilla's destruction, it's shot more of as a storm happening on the island than a monster. It puts the god in Godzilla, because if you know, the Japanese who now own the 1998 Godzilla took the god out of that Godzilla and just called it Zilla, because it was just a big iguana monster. This creature is Godzilla, because he's just causing all kinds of destruction using things like his fire breath. Fire breath. They did it, and I actually really liked how it looked kind of like plasma. It was a really interesting take on it, which I really loved, so they definitely got that right. So in conclusion, I didn't like the movie. It's one of the few movies where I kind of had a face on it while watching it. I was being disappointed during the movie. Usually I have to wait till after to really think over it. But by the time I was leaving the theater, I had pretty much made up my mind that I didn't like this movie. So if you haven't seen it, well, then you missed the spoiler alert, and I'm sorry, but you're not missing much. If a friend is wondering if he or she should see it, they're not missing much. If you want to get your Godzilla fix, there are plenty of Toho Company Godzilla movies that you can watch. I am a big fan of Godzilla Final Wars, because if you just want monster fights, this movie is full of them. I might even watch the 98 Godzilla movie here or there, because like I said, it does have memorable-ish characters, and I can see what's going on, as long as you just get over the fact that the thing in it is not Godzilla. And then of course you got Pacific Rim. There's a ton of other Godzilla movies. I just ordered a bunch of them on DVD, so I'm gonna watch those instead. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the Godzilla movie, and I guess this is the first Hyperdrive Pictures review. Will there be more of these? Subscribe to find out. If you want to see more of these, or if you want to share your thoughts on the Godzilla movie, leave them in the comments below, and I will read them and bring them up in the next review. I'm Steven Zarita. I hope you liked this video, and punch it!